As Jake Irvin was wildly impressive during his 2023 rookie season, looking ahead to 2024, what should the expectations be? And really, what should we expect from him in the rotation?
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as the show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, just make sure to check us out over on Twitter. Later on in today's show, an old friend, Anthony Rendon, has made some headlines for some comments that he has made. And I don't know if I'm all too surprised, but the comments were a little interesting. The reaction, what he said, was way more interesting. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on in today's show, as it is January 23rd, 2024. And the Nationals haven't really done all too much. So let's talk about Anthony Rendon and what he has said, and really what the reaction has been. We'll discuss that a little bit later on in today's show. Then, James Wood, should he start the season in Double-A? I got some thoughts on that, because if you remember James Wood, I expected him to make his major league debut in 2023. I thought he'd be a call-up. I didn't think he was going to start on the opening day roster come 2024, but ultimately I thought he was going to make the jump to the majors last year. He never even got to AAA. Where should he start 2024 at? I've got some answers for you a little bit later on in the show, but let's talk about Jake Irvin and really what the expectations should be for him moving forward. But before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So let's get started with talking about some news here. Not really news, but really just kind of more of a think tank Tuesday kind of conversation here. Jake Irvin, after in my opinion, a very impressive 2023 rookie campaign, a fourth-round pick out of the 2018 MLB draft, right then and there, that gives you the expectations. Not really to expect all too much from the kid coming out of college. But Jake Irvin, over the years, has battled Tommy John surgeries multiple times, had a ton of injuries in the past. Ultimately, in 2023, it's kind of cultivated to this big debut, and he actually was really impressive in his limited time up in the major leagues. Jake Irvin, in my opinion, through the second half of this season, was the Nationals' best starting pitcher, and really, it wasn't all too close. Josiah Gray struggled a lot down the stretch. Mackenzie Gore had his ups and his downs, but ultimately, Jake Irvin, the rookie, the 26-year-old rookie from this last year, he was the most impressive starting pitcher, in my opinion. Like, if I wanted to win a game, Jake Irvin was going to be the guy that I went and called on over the past 2023 campaign. But going into 2024, is it safe to say that Jake Irvin should be a lock in the rotation? Well, right then and there, to answer that question, 100% yes. He's going to be in the starting rotation, and in my opinion, you should not be looking at Jackson Rutledge to take his spot. And really, at this moment in time, you can't be even looking at Trevor Williams or Patrick Corbin. I understand the money and the everything that's tied up within them being on their final years of this contract, but they're not going to be in the equation here. Jake Irvin is going to be that guy, in my opinion, in which he's going to take the biggest step up in 2024. Yes. So what should your expectations be? Going into this season, he's going to be pinned as kind of like the fifth starter. And when you're the fifth starter on a rebuilding team, and a team that's not really going to be competing for any sort of postseason experience in 2024, you're always going to be kind of viewed as like a stopgap. Like, it's a cool story if he develops, but you're not really going to be putting too many eggs in that basket. You're not really putting all your eggs in the Jake Irvin basket. You've got Mackenzie Gore, Josiah Gray, Cade Cavalli, who's going to be making his second start up in the big leagues at some point this season. Jackson Rutledge, even, that you can kind of put your hat on and maybe rely on him down the line. But don't forget about Jake Irvin. What he did in 2023 should already tell you enough about what the pitcher that he is. Jake Irvin, after skipping his start back in the middle of the summer, if you remember, his first two starts were wildly impressive, making his second start against the San Francisco Giants, going into that seventh inning with no earned runs. That right then and there really showed me a lot about Jake Irvin. Number one, his composure. That was one thing all year that really was surprising to me. We've seen with Mackenzie Gore all over the place when he was having bad starts. You kind of see him kind of moaning and groaning. That's kind of a lot of young pitchers in today's game. And honestly, again, that is not a knock on a player. But when a starting pitcher is out there, I kind of want to see them more even keeled. Jake Irvin, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about him going into the dugout, throwing his glove down, and kind of just throwing a temper tantrum. Mackenzie Gore did that at times, but again, that's not the issue here. I'm just applauding Jake Irvin from what he did well. And I think that keeping his composure, kind of keeping himself in the moment and in the game is a very important aspect when it comes to pitching. You're already winning the headspace game if you can do that, and I think Jake Irvin did that very well this year. But as the Nationals, they kind of got into that summer, Jake Irvin started to get hit around a little bit. They decided to skip a start, fix some of his mechanics a little bit, kind of shorten up his stance and everything like that. And ever since then, his final 15 starts with the Nationals in 2023, he had a 3.59 ERA and a 1.234 whip. That is wildly impressive. Skipping one start, kind of tweaking whatever he was fixing there, in my opinion, it was kind of a lot of different things. But Jake Irvin, he was the most impressive pitcher down the stretch. That is why I go into 2024. He may be the 5 starter or whatever you want to call it, but he's going to be one of the 3 guys that I'll be watching the most in 2024. I got Mackenzie Gore, Josiah Gray, obviously, and Jake Irvin, even more so than Cade Cavalli, because at this moment in time, if you were going to ask me a year from right now, you're looking into the future. Who had a better 2024, Cade Cavalli or Jake Irvin? I'm going to go with Jake Irvin. And it's not because I don't believe in Cade Cavalli. I still believe in the prospect of Cavalli. I think he's going to be a very good middle rotation kind of guy. But I think Jake Irvin could also be in that mix as well. And the scarier thing is about Jake Irvin, he hasn't necessarily developed his 4th pitch just yet. Jake Irvin, we've already know about the fastball. His fastball is wildly impressive this year. His curveball, really good, and a sinker as well. But then his changeup, which is his 4th pitch, he only threw 5% of the time, considering he threw his fastball 36% of the time, his curveball 31% of the time, and the sinker 29% of the time. If Jake Irvin were to establish himself up in the major leagues, and when I mean establish himself as a really solid middle rotation guy, which he definitely could be, I think it's going to be for establishing that 4th pitch. If he can get that change up and just add that 4th pitch and use it consistently at a rate in which you're getting a lot of swings and misses for, that is when I think we'll be talking about him being a very good starter up in the major leagues. I'm not going to say ace. I don't think he's going to be an ace, but middle rotation guy, that is something that you can dream on. And it's not just something that you can just wish and hope for over time. I think this is a realistic goal with Jake Irvin. Now, this is best case scenario, 100% can admit that. But he's got the talent. He's got all the tools that you want. And a lot of the different things that you talk about with pitching, you can talk about his exit velocities. You can talk about his baseball savant profile and how he graded lowly in a lot of different categories there. The one thing that you can't necessarily grade is composure. That is something that stood out to me at a very early stage in his rookie season. He's not going to get teetered by anything going bad behind him. You've seen it in times with Mackenzie Gore again, which again happens with younger pitchers. Josiah Gray has done it with Jacob Young back in the summer when he kind of misplayed something out in center field there, and he let Jacob Young know about it. Not everyone is like this. Jake Irvin certainly did not let anything teeter him from his 2023 campaign. So now going into 2024, having that all said, I think he's going to add a little bit more to his 4th pitch. I think you're going to see a little bit more of the changeup this year. And I think that is when you'll see a much better version of Jake Irvin. But again, his final 2 starts of this season were awful, were really bad. But he even admitted he had an ankle injury. They did decide to shut him down. And ultimately, his ERA skyrocketed just a little bit by a few points. But ultimately, Jake Irvin was still very good down the stretch for this Nationals team in 2023. I think in 2024, don't just sleep on him. You've got some sexy names in there like Mackenzie Gore, Josiah Gray, Cade Cavalli. You got a lot of different things going on, but don't forget about Jake Irvin. I'm telling you right now, something about this guy going into spring training, I feel really confident in this kid. I think this is going to be something where you could be talking about him maybe being a middle of the rotation guy on a solid baseball team if all things can develop. And with this new player development department, new analytics, and new kind of overhaul in this front office, maybe you'll see something in that aspect. It'll be exciting to see, but ultimately, we'll just have to see what the Nationals and Jake Irvin can do. Thank you all for making Locked On Nets your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can check us out over on YouTube. Just search Locked On Nationals there and hit that subscriber button. Next, let's get into James Wood. Because James Wood, this is going to be an interesting topic as we get into the offseason. A lot of people will be discussing this. What could be coming from the kid? When will he start up in the major leagues? I've got some thoughts on that. But before that, let me tell you guys about our good friends over at eBay Motors. And guys, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Again, keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Now we get back into it, as James Wood is going to be a hot commodity come this 2024 season. He is expected to make his major league debut at some point in 2024. As he started the year in high A Wilmington, he quickly kind of made his way up to double A Harrisburg, as that's what the Nationals have been doing. They've been leaving these kind of high-key prospects like James Wood and Brady House. They didn't really keep them down in low A or high A Wilmington for that long. They quickly move them up, get them out of that pitcher-friendly ballpark, and give them up to a more hitter-friendly ballpark in double A Harrisburg. But where should James Wood start the season? Where should it be? Should it be double A or should it be triple A? At this moment in time, surprisingly enough, I'm going to start James Wood at double A. The reason why I say that is James Wood, number one, let's get this out of the way. He was still really impressive in his relatively long time and long tenure in double A Harrisburg last year. But here's a few things that I kind of saw that just kind of struck out for me a little bit, literally and figuratively. His strikeout rate did skyrocket a pretty decent amount. James Wood, going against tougher competition, it wasn't all that pretty. Now, again, the numbers that he put up at the end of the day were still very good. That's something that you can really kind of go into this offseason feeling great about. At only 20 years old, he still killed the ball at the double A level, and he also killed the baseball at high A Wilmington. But what I want to see is a little bit less strikeouts, because that is something that a lot of people were concerned about James Wood with coming into the draft back in 2021. Ultimately, has not really shown that at all. You don't really see the strikeout rate really pop out to you, but something that did in double A, it did kind of skyrocket a little bit compared to what he was at in Fredericksburg last year, and as well as high A Wilmington just a few weeks in the first part of this season. But I would not be stunned to see him start at double A, because I think a lot of people were really expecting an aggressive jump for James Wood. A lot of people, including myself, I wouldn't have been surprised if he finished the year in triple A this last year. And then if he did, then I think you probably would have seen him start this season in triple A. But sitting here today, January 23rd, 2024, I'm not putting him up in triple A just yet. Now, how long should he be in double A? Let's kind of get into that here real quick. I don't think he should be in double A for months on end. I think James Wood should start this season in double A, kind of similar to what he did with Wilmington. Maybe get a month under his belt under the season, get warmed up, kind of get your swing in, and then once it starts to warm up a little bit, go down to Harrisburg, go up to AAA Rochester, where it's going to be freezing cold right away. There could be some injuries there as well. I think that's also kind of a slept-on factor when it comes to Rochester. Getting in a warmer environment like Harrisburg, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world for James Wood. I think it's going to be a safe kind of thing because, again, He just turned 21 years old. This is a kid. This is a prospect. This is someone you don't necessarily really need to rush up to the major leagues. Drafted out of high school, there's still a lot of time to develop him. But James Wood, that's where he should be. Double A. You want to see him kind of work out some of these quirks that were in his game in Double A last year. Like, again, the strikeout rate. I would also like to see him be a little bit more of an advanced hitter because that is what he's touted to be. An advanced hitter who has power and really ultimately has solid swing decisions. But as we saw in Double A last year, you saw him not be as selective. And ultimately, that kind of led to a little more strikeouts, a little bit swinging and more swinging and misses. Ultimately, I'm not concerned about James Wood. You can say that right now. It's the top 15 prospect in all of baseball, the way that he should be. But the part is, you do want to see some growth. You do want to see some really stepping stones into this next kind of portion of his game because you don't want to just throw this kid up in the major leagues the way that we did Victor Robles in years past. You saw how that worked out. It was fine in 2019, but ultimately the issues that he still had in 2019 are still what he has in the year of 2024. You don't want to see that. You want to see guys kind of work through these things. And also with the way that the Nationals farm system is and the way that we have kind of dove into analytics again, the way that this player development department has really kind of been overhauled, and you kind of see the results that could happen here with more analytics and just more overall instruction. I think that would be a benefiting factor for James Wood. Get eyes and guys on him. You don't want to have him just throw out there and be in AAA just because he deserves to be there. He's 21. You don't have to rush this thing. And I don't think the Nationals will, in fact. I think the Nationals are probably going to play it relatively safe. And again, you should not be upset / stunned to see James Wood start the year in Double A. He's not going to be there that long. He's not going to be there for 3 months. He'll probably be there for a month. That is my prediction right now, and I think that's going to be the right thing to do. Now, if he's in big league camp, and let's say he's killing the baseball, if he's killing baseballs the way that Jordan Walker was last spring training, maybe we'll have a different story. If he's going to be killing major league pitching the way that Jordan Walker was in spring training last year, you saw the Cardinals say, this guy's ready for the big leagues. He's going to start in the opening day lineup. I don't think James Wood, that will not be the case. But if he does kill the baseball in spring training, that is when you can kind of convince me like, all right, this kid's going to be ready for AAA. And then you could probably see him up in the majors at some point this summer. But I'm not going to be that aggressive with him unless he does that, where he just kills it in spring training. The Nationals, they shouldn't be in a rush either. Because again, there are some flaws in James Wood's game. You may hear me, including me, and a lot of others out there, tout James Wood and the power and the good person that he is, all the different qualities that have been great and that have been touted so highly by all these scouts and all these people who write about prospects and people who talk about them as well. All of these great things about him, which are great, but you don't want to have those be for nothing. You don't really want to rush this process along. Because again, I think a lot of this, and really comes down to the Nationals as a whole. You've seen this in the past where you have Juan Soto at 19 years old come up, make his major league debut, and kill the baseball immediately. First pitch he sees, hits an opposite field home run, and that's when you know this kid's going to be legit. It's not like that for every prospect. We've been spoiled in a sense. We've had a lot of prospects fly through the system in years past. You've seen Bryce Harper in 2012 after being drafted #1 overall years prior. You saw Steven Strasburg fly through the system as well. Those are different kind of prospects. And then, of course, Juan Soto in years past. And Victor Robles even kind of flowed through the system as well. Trey Turner, Anthony Rendon. A lot of different guys in the past have really just flown through the farm system and have gotten up to the major leagues relatively early. James Wood should not be on that trajectory at this point. He hasn't been flawless in his progression. He's still been very good. He's still a top 15 prospect in all of baseball for a reason, because he's loaded with talent and oozes talent, oozes power, and all the different things that you want in today's game in 2024. But don't rush James Wood. This is not something that you should be rushing to see him get up to the major leagues. The Nationals, they ain't winning the pennant in 2024. You don't have to win it this year. But 2025, that's when James Wood's going to be in the majors, and that's when he's going to be on this opening day lineup alongside Dylan Cruz and maybe alongside Brady House as well. So ultimately, with the Nationals, start him in Double A. It's all right. It's okay to have him start there, work out some things, get some eyes on him, get some analytics on him, get him some extra reps make that jump to AAA, and then at some point this summer, later on, see him up in the major leagues hitting bombs on Half Street. That's what we all want to see. I think we will see that this year for sure. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to our first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Again, that is Locked On Sports Today. Next, Anthony Rendon, old friend, made some comments that have ruffled some feathers, to say the least. We'll discuss that after this. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Anthony Rendon was on another baseball podcast, which unfortunately I don't have the name for it, but if you look up Anthony Rendon right now, you will find these quotes. You will find the clip. Everyone's talking about it. And ultimately, Anthony Rendon has kind of become like this heel in baseball. Not a lot of people love this guy anymore. The way that the Nationals fans, we embrace Anthony Rendon. A lot of people loved Anthony Rendon, including myself. I love Anthony Rendon, 2019 legend. Love the guy. You had to let him walk. You had to sign Steven Strasburg. And at that time, a lot of people were okay with it, including myself. But at the end of the day, we all know how Anthony Rendon's contract turned out. Also, we know how Steven Strasburg's contract turned out. None of them being good. The quote that got everyone really up in a frenzy was, quote, Anthony Rendon said this, quote, "We got to shorten the season. It's too many dang games. You have 162 games and 185 days. That's too much, man." That was kind of paraphrased at the end, but you get the gist. Anthony Rendon, even dating back to his time with the Nationals, a lot of people always kind of said, this guy doesn't love baseball. And really, it's kind of evident, I think, that Anthony Rendon is one of those guys where he plays baseball because he's good at it, not necessarily because he loves it. I mean, in that aspect of it, people really care about that part. Whatever. Like, is he a little bit spoiled? I guess you could say so. Even then, it's a little dicey, to say the least. He's making millions, 300 million plus at this point in his career. He's making good money. You better love the game. I understand that part. But still, it's not crazy. It's not insane to say that someone doesn't love their job. Are they fortunate? Yes. Do I think he believes that he's fortunate? I do. I don't think he's this some jerk who comes off as some big jerk that everyone hates. I don't necessarily see that. He's had some bad moments, 100%. Like, I think grabbing the fan by his jersey, bad thing. That was terrible what Anthony Rendon did. But still, this quote, I just think Anthony Rendon is becoming like this villain of baseball, that everyone just wants to kind of say, this guy's bad. He's bad. He doesn't want to play baseball anymore. He doesn't like baseball. He has been open in the past about him not necessarily liking baseball and doing what he does for a living. Meanwhile, us sitting at home talking about this, we love to be out there to play baseball and get paid millions for it. It's a great life they live. I think Anthony Rendon recognizes that. Maybe he just doesn't like baseball that much. It's not a crazy thing to say, to have 162 games and say, I think we should probably have less. Now, again, if this was 2019, Anthony Rendon's coming off an all-star campaign. Anthony Rendon is doing very well for himself. I think if Anthony Rendon said that then, people wouldn't be all too offended. I don't think they would be. I don't think that should be the case, in fact. But now, sitting here, Anthony Rendon, kind of a villain, not necessarily liked by Angels fans. They've already lost Shohei Ohtani this offseason to their crosstown rival. They've seen their crosstown rival get a whole lot better this year. I don't necessarily think it's all this bad and terrible things that Anthony Rendon has said in the past. I just don't understand everyone being riled up about what Rendon said. Let the guy have an opinion. If it's a dumb one, it's a dumb one. But if it's a good one, then it's a good one. That's really all that has to be said about the man, the myth, the legend, Tony Two Bags. Interesting world we live in, but Anthony Rendon, you got to love the guy. Am I right? Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, check us out over on YouTube. Just search Locked On Nationals there. And of course, check us out wherever you get your pods. Just search Locked On Nationals. that is where you will find us. And hit that subscriber button while you're at it. I'll catch you guys on the flip side for a What If Wednesday tomorrow. You won't want to miss it. I'll catch you then.